This is every single fight to make after UFC Vegas 43, Vieira versus Tate. I've got all of the key fighters from that card on the screen right now, and you may notice there is an empty box next to all of them, and that's where their next opponent's going to go, who I have hidden around the perimeter of the screen. As this video goes on, I'll reveal their new opponents one by one and place them where they belong on the screen. Let's start straight away with the main event. Kelten Vieira versus Miesha Tate, a very uneventful 5-round fight. Kelten Vieira got the job done. She needs to take on another woman in the Bantamweight division and hopefully up the rankings as well. So let's give her the preacher's daughter, Holly Holm, in the Bantamweight division. And here's why you do this: because you have to move Kelten Vieira up the rankings in the Bantamweight division. You have to give her a big name because she's just won a main event against Miesha Tate. So her name, if anything, is going to get a little bit bigger, even though I doubt she really gained that much attention whatsoever from that win. Kelten Vieira, Holly Holm, the only fight that makes sense. Kelten Vieira's lost to Yana Kunitskaya. She's lost to Irene Aldana by first round KO. Irene Aldana was scheduled to take on Germaine de Randamie. I assume they're going to be rescheduling that bout as well to try and make sure Irene Aldana can attempt to get back to the top, or Germaine de Randamie keeps her position and earns another shot against Nunes, because the division's just an absolute mess right now. But Holly Holm was teasing the idea of moving up to the women's featherweight division. I don't want that whatsoever. Stay in the women's bantamweight division. The women's featherweight division shouldn't even exist. It's literally just there to serve as free legacy for Amanda Nunes, so they can call her the GOAT, even though it shouldn't exist in the first place. But I know the UFC doesn't want to admit they were wrong. That's the only reason they're keeping open the women's featherweight division. They don't want to admit they were wrong, and they don't want to get rid of it and say, we made a mistake, this division shouldn't exist. So it's going to keep open, but I don't think Holly Holm should move up. Stay at bantamweight. We needed to take on Kelten Vieira because we can't do Irene Aldana versus Holly Holm again. It just happened recently. Holly Holm won very convincingly in that fight as well. So, in order to keep fresh matchups, Irene Aldana, Germaine de Randamie, Kelten Vieira versus Holly Holm. Let's move on to the loser of the main event. Miesha Tate lost in the 5 rounds. Took some damage. Didn't say she wanted to retire, so she wants to keep fighting. Her next opponent should be Aspen Ladd. Aspen Ladd, you aren't even that big for the women's bantamweight division. You just aren't. Trim off some fat. Avoid your time in a month and get in there and fight Miesha Tate at 135 pounds. Both girls are coming off losses. The win would keep both of them in the top 5 mix and put them right back in a position to take out top contenders again. So, Miesha Tate versus Aspen Ladd. Move on to the interesting ones. Let's go. Sean Brady. Oh, but he didn't even win that impressively. But Sean Brady won against Michael Chiesa. Won the first round quite clearly. Won the positional control battle of the second round despite being out-damaged. They don't score fights on damage anymore when undefeated prospects are concerned. So Sean Brady won the fight. He can win the fight. It's not a robbery. I'm not trying to say that, but it's an interesting fight that was very close and is opinionated and can go either way. Sean Brady got the win. It wasn't an impressive win for me to say, time for Gilbert Burns, time for Vicente Luque, because I do believe they would beat him in that third round. If Michael Chiesa is teeing up on you in that third round, the Luques and Gilbert Burns of this world will really badly flatten you as well. I don't think the Covington matchup makes sense either, but if I was Covington and I saw that fight with Brady, I'd be like, hey, give me Brady. Look like a tough guy. Give me 5 rounds against Brady in a main event. Just keep me busy. Covington would beat him quite easily in my opinion, but let's talk about Brady's next matchup. I think he needs to take a fight in the meantime because he's a young guy. He's got a lot of time to improve. Let's give him a fight in the meantime before we jump him up against the top contenders. He said he wants someone in the top 10. The best I can do is this: Santiago Ponzinibbio. If Ponzinibbio beats Jeff Neal in December, they're on the pay-per-view card, they're on the pay-per-view main event, it's going to be a massive fight. I do believe Santiago Ponzinibbio will beat Jeff Neal on that card as well. I think he's too good for him, and I think he'll beat him over those 3 rounds. Close fight though, maybe Jeff Neal wins, and if Jeff Neal does win, we could do Sean Brady versus Jeff Neal, but I feel like Sean Brady takes one step back, wins that one, and then looks towards the top 5 of the welterweight division. And I think Santiago Ponzinibbio, with a good win over Jeff Neal, would put himself close to the top 10 or in the top 10. And Sean Brady's going to be, what, number 7, number 8 maybe, by the time Tuesday comes around, tomorrow, or the day after, sorry. So Sean Brady, Santiago Ponzinibbio, if he beats Jeff Neal, New Year, May, April, something like that. We'll see how things go. I think that's the perfect matchup for Sean Brady. One step back, compose himself, get a little bit better, and then take on the top contenders afterwards, because right now at welterweight it's a logjam. There's a bunch of contenders. Edwards wants his title shot. Chimaev's going to be fighting Gilbert Burns soon, I assume. Good matchup. Sean Brady, Santiago Ponzinibbio. Moving on. Michael Chiesa lost in the co-main event, very barely. Almost finished Sean Brady at the end of the third round. I think he should get right back in there against Jingliang, maybe in February or March of next year. Because again, Michael Chiesa, you didn't take any damage, really. You got out-controlled. You had your back taken here and there. You're in shape. Enjoy Christmas. Stay in reasonably good shape over the Christmas holiday. Get back in there afterwards and take on Jingliang February, March next year on a pay-per-view card in March maybe as the co-main event of a fight night in March as well, maybe as well. Michael Chiesa, Jingliang, both guys lost recently. Only a couple of weeks ago did Jingliang get choked out by Khamzat Chimaev. You got to take a little bit of time off after getting choked out because of course your brain technically did get switched off. So give him a little bit of time to improve and gather himself again and get some confidence back. And then Michael Chiesa, Jingliang, the winner sticks around in the top 10 and puts themselves in a position to take on another top 10 opponent. So, Michael Chiesa, Jingliang, Sean Brady versus the winner of Jeff Neal versus Ponzinibbio, who I believe will be Ponzinibbio. Let's move on to another fight on the card in the feature fight. Taylor Santos finished Joanne Calderwood in the first round. Very, very impressive performance. Dropped her twice and choked her out. Her next opponent, Lauren Murphy, not so lucky anymore. She's going to get beaten by Taylor Santos in my opinion, but it's a good matchup and it makes sense. Taylor Santos, Lauren Murphy. Lauren Murphy's going to want to get back in there soon, probably early next year. Taylor Santos didn't take any damage whatsoever, so keep her active. Give her Lauren Murphy, and in this way, Shevchenko took Lauren Murphy to the fourth round. If Taylor Santos can beat Lauren Murphy by first round finish, like she just did to Joanne Calderwood, there's some arguments there of like, this might be actually a threat to Valentina Shevchenko, so I think they should give her similar opponents that Shevchenko's had before in her own career, and if she can beat them more impressively, it builds the hype for a Taylor Santos matchup, so keep her active. We got to go right now in the women's flyweight division because there's literally no contender that makes sense for Shevchenko right now, so do Taylor Santos, Lauren Murphy, make the matchup happen. Let's get things going in February of next year. Prelims of the pay-per-view, headliner of the prelims, co-main event of the prelims. We'll see what they do. They'll probably fucking put it in the feature fight, knowing the fucking dumbass UFC. Moving on. Adrian Yanez barely beat Davy Grant in a very close fight, but he did win it. He did win the fight. He landed that shot that rocked Davy Grant in the first round and won the third round quite clearly. It's a very close fight though. So in my opinion, I know there's talks about Sean O'Malley and other opponents for Adrian Yanez. If Sean O'Malley beats Raulian Paiva, he's looking at Dominic Cruz. He's looking at other names, maybe a Marlon Vera rematch, maybe a Marlon Moraes to move him up the rankings. If O'Malley beats Raulian Paiva, he'll get number 15 in the Bantamweight division, and he won't be looking back at Adrian Yanez no matter what he says. The only reason I believe he wants to fight Adrian Yanez is because watching the Randy Costa fight, O'Malley is Randy Costa with cardio, and I think he would pretty handily beat Adrian Yanez. And he knows that, and he knows if the UFC is not willing to pay him more money to move up the rankings, he'll just take on Adrian Yanez. And let's face it, probably beat him based on style matchups. I know people don't like Sean O'Malley here and there, but you've got to admit that's a really good matchup for him. Stand-up fight. Long range is Sean O'Malley. Adrian Yanez doesn't have too much range. Sticks to the boxing a little bit too much. O'Malley throws a lot of kicks. He can mix up the timing and do what Randy Costa did for 3 rounds. But I believe the next opponent for Adrian Yanez should be Montel Jackson. Let's take another step. Let's just take another semi-step here against a decent opponent in Montel Jackson, who couldn't really put away JP Bays, who's top 30 in the men's bantamweight division right now. I believe even top 25. I think he's number 23 or something like that in the men's bantamweight division. So winner of this one gets a ranked opponent. Let's keep him active. Let's put him on the February card, on the pay-per-view Adesanya's undercard, on the prelims. Let's open up the prelims with Adrian Yanez versus Montel Jackson. Adrian Yanez is young. We don't want to rush him against a ranked opponent now, or against a Sean O'Malley now and have both stars cancel each other out. Let's do Adrian Yanez versus a winnable matchup in Montel Jackson that's still very dangerous and that he still gets a lot of credit for beating. Let's do that matchup next. I think it makes all the sense in the world. Adrian Yanez, Montel Jackson, 2 marketable guys. 2 guys that are on the come-up right now in the bantamweight division. And 2 guys who need one more solid win and performance before they get a ranked opponent in that division as well. So, Yanez, Jackson, great stand-up matchup. Both guys quite highly ranked at bantamweight. I think that's the next one to happen because Adrian Yanez, he's good. And maybe he was off because his coach died and that's why he didn't look so good against Davy Grant. But if you're struggling and barely beating Davy Grant, the top guys at bantamweight, this isn't the middleweight division. You know, this is the men's bantamweight division. This is actually a good men's division. You've got to be ready to take on those big jumps up. Let's do Adrian Yanez versus Montel Jackson, and we'll move on from there afterwards if he does win. Moving on to another guy who lost to Adrian Yanez that I thought I'd include in this video, Davy Grant. Had a great performance, let's be real. And there's the UFC London card coming up in March. You've got to put Davy Grant on there. He's came a long way since last year. I think he's built up a bit of a fan base for himself. I think people know now that Davy Grant, win or lose, is going to put on an amazing fight. He was one of the only good fights on this entire card because he was in it and Adrian Yanez was in it as well. I think Davy Grant always puts on a show. So, in UFC London, tell me this doesn't make sense. Old English dog versus the young English pup, Nathaniel Wood. England on England. Let's see if Nathaniel Wood can take over, retire Davy Grant most likely and move on with his own career, or let's see if Davy Grant can prove that he's too much for Nathaniel Wood. And I actually think this is a winnable matchup for both of them because Nathaniel Wood, although very, very good, and I thought he beat Casey Kenny on 2 weeks' notice, I think a lot of people did as well. Although being very good, he does get hit quite a bit, and he does go down when he gets hit. He's got a bit of a... It's not a chin problem. He actually has a good chin because he always recovers immediately and pops back up. But I'm saying he doesn't have a granite chin. And Davy Grant might be able to give him some problems, land a couple of big shots, and it would make for an entertaining firefight. And you just know that if this was opening up the London main card with a crowd in London, Nathaniel Wood's from London, Davy Grant's from up north, so it's not the same thing, but he's still from England, so he'll get the respect, and he's been around for ages fighting with great fights, so he'll get a lot of respect in England. I think we do an England versus England matchup, a guaranteed fight of the night performance for sure, opens up the main card in England, on the London card, makes perfect sense for me, plus they're both coming off losses. Nathaniel Wood's just recovered from a broken hand, hopefully they can sign things and make it happen on that card. One of them stays on, one of them probably goes home. Nathaniel Wood probably doesn't go home, but he definitely starts right back at the beginning again of his career. Let's make that matchup now. There's only room for one Englishman in the UFC Bantamweight division, I guess. Let's start that matchup immediately because that's going to be fight of the night 100%. Moving on. Cody Durden, the new villain of the UFC. He called out Jeff Molina, and let's fucking do it. It makes all the sense in the world. The call-out's been made. I am so glad, by the way, and I know a lot of people on Twitter, obviously, right now, are really upset about what Cody Durden said. I don't give a fuck. In all honesty, I really don't care about words. So Cody Durden, Jeff Molina, they've made the fight. There's going to be some back-and-forth shit-talking, I'm sure. And Cody Durden's just announced himself as another name to watch out for in the men's flyweight division because the men's flyweight division does not get enough love. It's one of the best skilled division in the UFC. The best skilled division in the UFC, maybe, but I think bantamweight and featherweight are quite up there as well. It's honestly so fun to watch flyweight bouts. I don't understand how they're not more marketable, but in order to get attention, let's make a bad guy. Cody Durden, Jeff Molina, have them shit talk back and forth. If Jeff Molina wins, he'll be a big name because he's gathered a bit of attention now himself. He even called out Cody Durden after his last win against Alan Nascimento, I believe it was. He called out Cody Durden, had a great performance, got on a microphone, called out Cody Durden. They've got some kind of beef going on. Let's settle the beef on the main card of a fight night. Open up the main card with Jeff Molina versus Cody Durden. Give them both their first chance on the main card to make a show. And I think they will make a show because flyweights always do. I think this is a great matchup. Cody Durden, Jeff Molina. Winner gets ranked in the flyweight division and starts looking towards the top 10 for their next opponent. Cody Durden versus Jeffrey Molina. Makes all the sense in the world. And they're on similar schedules too. And they both want to be on that February pay-per-view card, so that's when they should do it. Moving on, Lupita Godinez got a win over Luma Lookboom. Yeah, she can take on Brianna Van Buren. No idea what happened to her. She lost to Tisha Torres, hasn't fought since. So I'm assuming she wants to fight soon. Lupita Godinez rarely takes time off. I believe she's had like 3 fights in about a month. It feels like anyway. So, Lupita Godinez, Brianna Van Buren. Little bit of a throwaway one at the end just to fill up my little table here and make things symmetrical. But you know what? Good matchup. Winner gets ranked in the women's strawweight division. Brianna Van Buren would stay ranked. I have no idea how she's ranked, by the way. She hasn't beat anyone, but for some reason she's fucking ranked. She literally hasn't beat anyone. She lost to Tisha Torres. And she's ranked. I don't know. But Lupita Godinez, Brianna Van Buren, do that matchup. Done. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button up there. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.